Welcome to the December 9th, 2025 special meeting of the Northampton City Council. I'm Alex Jarrett. As City Council President, I'll be presiding, and along with Vice President Rachel Maori. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded, and the meeting can also be watched on Comcast Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube channel. I now call the council to order. Could you take the roll, please, Laura?
Sure. Councillor Dobbs.
Here.
Councillor Elkins. I had not seen her yet.
I saw her a minute ago.
Okay. I haven't made her a co-host then because I hadn't found her.
Let me see.
And oh, there she is.
Okay.
Hi, Councillor Elkins. Sorry, I just made you a co-host. I'm assuming you're present.
I am. Hi, here.
Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Clemmer.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Moulton.
Here.
Councillor Perry.
Here.
And Councillor Rothenberg.
Here.
Council President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We are here to discuss the school energy project financial orders. And these were subject to charter objections on December 4th, and so have been moved to the next special meeting. The first one is 25.338, in order to appropriate money from climate stabilization for solar PV array at Ryan Road School. And I would ask if, I don't know if Ben is, Ben Weil here. Yes, welcome, Director Weil. And I would ask if the mayor or Director Weil would like to speak to these items. I don't believe they really got a chance to at our previous meeting.
I can reiterate and perhaps respond to some of the discussion I've heard since. I did do the presentation at the first reading. I think the main point that I would want to make is that this is a transfer from an investment by the Climate Stabilization Fund towards the operating budget of the schools in an average amount of about $63,000 and change. If we were to simply transfer, which obviously we couldn't do, but if we were to simply transfer the final cost of this project after incentives, which is $319,484, it would last only 5 years at the amount of $63,318 per year. This will continually deposit that amount into the school's operating budget for 25 years or more. So I feel like this is a pretty strong argument that this is helpful to the operating budget of schools. The result of delay comes in two events. So were we to miss the December 31st deadline to have a contract in place, the annual income will be reduced by about $26,173 up to. It would vary. We don't know the exact amount, but we would miss the SMART deadline, the SMART 3.0 incentive deadline for this round. In addition, we would be required to use some more expensive solar panels and in order to be able to get the investment tax credit. But we would still be eligible for the investment tax credit. However, if the project, so the project would likely cost more if we missed the December 1st deadline, with final cost being about $60,000 more in terms of the final cost. If we were to delay past July 4th, and this can happen through various accumulation of delays, the total cost would be borne by the city because we would have missed the deadline for the investment tax credit, which is about 30%.
Thank you for that explanation. Councilors, questions or comments on this item? Councilor Clemmer.
Thank you. Dr. Weil, Yeah, we spoke yesterday, but, so if we just didn't, if we keep delaying and then the boiler just stops working, which, it's.
Counselor Clemmer, we're not on an item about the boiler. This is
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
solar
Okay,
array at Ryan Road School.
never mind, sorry about that. I'll come back to it.
Okay, Counselor Rothenberg.
Yeah, we still don't have a contract for this that we can see, is that right?
We have a contract form, in other words, like a preview of the type of contract this would be, but we cannot legally, as I understand it, enter into a contract unless we have an appropriation that would allow us to be able to pay that contract.
And council hasn't seen the contract form, is that right?
Well, I believe that is true, but it would be a contract in the amounts that we talked about, right? So it which could vary because again, once we've engaged with this company, then they would have to go do additional work. So we've gotten a bunch of free work to get us to this point and this level of specificity, but the kind of the final design, the final pricing, all of that stuff would come once they believe that they have a contract that, you know, when we're saying, yes, we actually can engage your services.
And how is this different from the Jackson Street in terms of the terms of our contract?
This would be a purchase. In other words, because the roof is in good shape and therefore the total cost is lower, and so we can actually afford to just buy it. It is a much better deal for the city to be able to buy it. So this is a purchase. We would own the panels. We get 100% of the value of their, of their production and of the smart incentives.
So
Uh,
whereas the Jackson Street would be like, that's where we end up in that much longer engagement with them.
Correct. So that would be a 25-year power purchase agreement.
Okay.
The difference is that in that case, we're not paying any money up front.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor Clemmer. Any further discussion? Counselor Rothenberg.
Why do the counselors not hear about this sooner and include it in the previous SIP?
May I answer this question?
Go ahead, Director Weil.
So we have been developing it as rapidly as we could. So I've been on the job for a bit more than a year. First, I had to figure out what are the possible places where we can have PV operations and then eliminate those that are not going to work well for whatever reason. Then I have to engage the services of a solar company to take a look and offer me a proposal. And they have to do quite a bit of work on each of the sites that we've identified. So you're not hearing about a bunch of sites that are plausible sites that might have been good choices, but are not the best choices. And so these ones were the first ones. And it took this long to get people out physically on the roof, right? So I went out with them on the roof and walked on them and made sure that they're in good shape and looked at where are we going to actually connect this and is the transformer in a location and of a correct size, et cetera. So like our first version of the Ryan Road project, for example, that we're discussing now was larger. And it would have been great to do it, but it would have cost much, much more to get the additional power capacity to serve that larger PV array. So there had to be a redesign, and all of that takes time. And we could dawdle on this all we want, but we also have the end of the investment tax credits looming, and that's why we brought this to you ahead of the SIP because of the consequences of not going before the end of this year, which were
Right,
imposed
that all
on
makes sense. That
external.
makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands, roll call, please. Oh, Counselor Labarge.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the Dr. Wheel for explaining about Ryan Road School. I mean, if you look at this order and him talking about it, the amount of money that we are going to be saving also at Ryan Road School by doing the solar PV array. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please, on 25.338 in order to appropriate money from climate stabilization for solar PV array at Ryan Road School.
Counselor Dobbs,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Clemmer,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
and Counselor Rothenberg.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We move on to 25.339, an order authorizing leasehold interest and 25-year power purchase agreement for canopy solar installation at Jackson Street School. Director Weil?
So again, I'll try to address this one in the framing that this is a transfer of resources to the operating budget of Northampton Public Schools. A smaller amount, about almost for $40,000 annually in savings to the NPS operating budget. We can think of this as a transfer from the labor of Kappa, if you will, and of other city entities, including central services and so forth, to get to the point where this is a possibility. So that's one way of thinking about it. And obviously, it's an investment in that sort of time. And I'm sorry, I read the wrong quantity. Over the annual savings over a 25-year term is $43,000, 703. That's kind of what we think about it. Result of delay is, again, more expensive photovoltaic panels. More expensive panels makes for a more expensive project, meaning that the developer has to charge us a higher PPA rate, which means we get less savings. Missing the December 1st delay also results in a lower SMART 3.0 incentive. We don't know exactly how much lower at this point. Based on a preliminary kind of running of the model that I asked our select to do, the PPA would likely come in at about 18 cents, which is about equivalent to what we're paying now. We could certainly decide whether it's worth doing it anyway, because over time, the price of electricity will escalate, while this would be a fixed rate for 25 years, but it's certainly not as good a deal as 15 cents. So that's a reason to move with alacrity.
Thank you. And that date is December 31st. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Did I say something different?
I heard first, but I could, it could have blipped
No,
out for
30,
a second.
31st. End of the
Great. Counselors, questions and comments? Counselor Labarge.
Yes. So what I'm hearing is that this is a 20-year long-term bond. Is that correct?
No, this is not.
Or otherwise, is this a transfer of 30,000 annually in their operating budget? Is that what I heard?
No, I expressed that sloppily, perhaps. It's not a bond. It is a purchase agreement. So the company builds and maintains and is responsible for the PV array at Jackson Street.
Okay.
Any energy produced by that, we have agreed to buy at a fixed rate. And depending on when we do this actual contract, we'll find out what that actual rate is. But based on the current conditions, it would be about 15 cents per kilowatt hour, which is better than the 18 or almost 19 cents per kilowatt hour that we pay now.
I got that.
So yes, so that's all it would be. It's a commitment to purchase the production for 25 years.
Okay. And also, I think I heard you say that it will also bring in a 33,000 in savings.
For 43 on average over that 25 years, on average, about $43,000 in savings to the NPS budget.
Okay. And why would the panels be more expensive?
If we don't, this has to do with the Trump administration and how it has changed the tax incentives. If we want to still get the tax incentives, if we have a contract before the end of this year, we have safe harbored our project. And that means we're allowed to use solar panels that might be produced in China, which is where 90% of all the solar panels in the world are produced. And they are less expensive than those that are produced in the United States. If we start a contract after the end of this year, in order to get the investment tax credit, the solar developer would have to use US produced panels. Those are a little bit more expensive. And so they would have to refigure the power purchase price.
Thank you so much for that explanation.
Councilor Rothenberg.
I have three questions. What is again, this is, well, as a preface to those three, again, this is a situation where we haven't seen the contract, right?
We have shared with Director Nardi a model contract. In other words, kind of like the contract that they would do, but without prices, because again, they can't do that until they do the design. But
So in the model contract,
Yeah.
what does it say is the provision for if the solar company goes out of business?
I actually don't know that off the top of
What
my
does
head.
it say for any kind of an escalation clause having to do with that fixed rate?
There is no escalation. It is a fixed rate. That part I know.
And what does it say for any kind of exit clause?
I'll have to look at it. And those, of course, would all be negotiated by our city solicitor.
And this $43,000 per year, I mean, am I doing my math right? That's really only about 0.1% of the overall school budget per year?
Oh, I'm sure I mean, it's not a lot, but it's better than zero.
Maybe, I mean, depending on what those clauses are, right? Or what potentially could happen over the course of these 25 years, given
So-
various contingencies.
So let me clarify one thing. The request here is an enabling authorization. It is not a commitment to sign that contract. And in fact, if the city's, I guess it's the school's lawyer, determines that it is not in our benefit, we don't sign the contract and we don't do it. This is just enabling us to be able to go look.
Is council enabling a lower body to make financial choices in that regard?
I guess you would think of it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
That without this enabling, then there cannot be a solar canopy on the school property, right?
I mean, I would be comfortable with this if the motion were passed in such a way that it came back to council before signing. But I think we need to be aware of the financial repercussions. I think that's our duty as the city council.
Director
see.
Weil, I see that Mayor Shara has her hand. Would you like her to address the questions that are posed to you?
She is more qualified than I am.
Mayor Shara? Oh, I think that Mayor Shara may need to be made a co-host.
Yeah.
And perhaps Director Nardi as well in order to speak.
Hi, thank you. Yes, I can't start my video, but I also couldn't unmute, so thank you for figuring that out. So I know what I'm telling you. So just to be clear, the council does not, the council appropriates funds, but does not authorize contracts. So I just want to make that clear. Contracts don't come to the council unless they're over 3 years. So there seems to be an expectation that
I'm sorry, I can't understand the mayor. It doesn't come to council unless what?
Yeah, Mayor, you're echoing quite a bit. I don't know if there's a way to move closer to the microphone.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to make her a co-host and having difficulty finding her. Is it school committee Zoom? Is that?
Northampton Mayor Gina Louise Shera.
Is that better in terms of?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I just changed microphones internally. Okay, so the council does not authorize contracts. They appropriate funds. So that was the point that I was making.
But
Thank
I
you.
missed what you said. You said contracts only come to council if they are over something.
If a contract is over 3 years, then it goes to the council.
Isn't this 25 years?
The agreement is 25 years.
What's the difference between an agreement and a contract?
Maybe Director Nardi, you can answer if this would be different.
Director Nardi?
I can't unmute. I mean, I can't change my video. But so the authorization to enter into a contract comes before council. We do not bring contracts to council. That is a function of the executive branch. And you authorize the appropriation. You authorize if we are going to enter into a contract greater than 3 years, but the actual contract is a function of the executive branch with our attorney. Does that clarify?
I mean, in a way, yes, but there is no contract, right? So we haven't seen what the final terms are. So how can we authorize that?
No, so the council's role is to appropriate the funding for a project, and the executive branch enters into the contract, and we review the contract with our attorneys and their attorneys to settle on that. That is not something we bring. We don't actually bring the contract to council to review and discuss terms with. The role of the council is to appropriate funds and to authorize anything over 3 years.
All right, I'll make comments on that during the deliberation.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Perry. And then Councilor Moulton.
Yeah, so my question is about the size, I guess, and scope of the project, how long construction would take, what sort of impacts that will have on the parking lot of the school and whatnot. Just
So my understanding from kind of walking the site with their engineers and figuring it out is it would be done during the coming summer, right? So it would only construction can only really happen during the summer when school is out. So it would be started and completed during that summer break. We are talking with the facilities manager. He would like to see if in that process they could also repave the parking lot. So we may try to work something out with them in that way, but that's again just something he'd like to see. We looked into like impacts on trees, and we shifted the design of the canopy so that we don't have to impact any major trees. Did that cover the questions you had?
Yeah, I saw a thumbs up. Councilor Moulton.
Thank you. I want to go back to the issue of the contract. This is a 25-year power purchase agreement that requires a contract. The way the contract is negotiated and approved by the executive branch is no different from any other contracts. Is that correct, Director Nardi?
That is correct.
Thank you. So this is following standard protocol. The council appropriates. The executive branch, the mayor's office, the city attorney is then responsible for negotiating a favorable contract for the city. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Moulton. Further discussion. Councilor Rothenberg.
Yeah, I can think of no more naive action that a council could take than to enter into a 25-year agreement with an energy company I mean, of all of the industries that we know in America that are kind of more powerful than just about anything else, including governments, it seems awfully reckless. And to call this standard operating protocol, to not be able to really find any corroboration. I haven't been able to find anyone that says a lack of an escalation clause can be real. Everyone says that's too good to be true in this industry that I've been able to find. That we don't know what the exit clause is, that we don't know what happens if they go out of business, that we are for a savings of 0.1% of the school budget rushing into a 25-year agreement and saying, well, this is just how our council does things, I think is something for the next council to really grapple with in terms of what they believe their standard protocol is and what our role is. This has not even gone through finance. It's really shocking. And I think at some point, council, again, needs to get their own attorney if you want to have somebody who's reviewing contracts. So this will be a no vote for me.
Any other questions or clarifications from staff? Okay, roll call please on approval.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes. Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Clemmer,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Maori, yes, Counselor Perry,
Yes.
and Counselor Rothenberg.
No.
25.339, an order
Sorry,
off.
you didn't call my name.
I'm so sorry, Counselor Dobbs.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. 25.339, an order authorizing leasehold interest and 25-year power purchase agreement for canopy solar installation at Jackson Street School is approved with 8 yes votes and 1 no. Brings us to the last item on our agenda, 25.340, an order to authorize appropriation and borrowing for geothermal system at Northampton High School. We'll start by recognizing Director Weil, if you would like anything you'd like to add before we go to questions from counselors.
Sure. I guess I'd just like to reiterate again, kind of what the finances are and what the consequences of delay are. So this is primarily financed by loans and the Climate Stabilization Fund. So that this is, again, if you think about it in terms of the savings, it's a transfer, again, very small portion of the school budget, but a non-zero portion, a transfer of about $40,000 annually to the NPS operating budget from an investment on the part of climate stabilization and the city's borrowing capacity. I think it is important to consider that it will actually improve comfort and thermal performance of the school, which has a well-documented and direct measurable impact on test scores and measures of emotional and social well-being, which is one thing we actually want out of school buildings. And the consequences of delay is to keep in mind that we will have to replace the chillers very soon. If we let fate decide when we replace them, it will be a like-for-like replacement on an emergency basis with no incentives and will foreclose the decarbonization potential of the school for the next 25 years or so, because we will have made an investment in essentially the existing type of technology. We will likely have to replace the boilers within the next 8 years if we run them at the current rate. Total replacement cost for the boiler and chiller is likely to be equal or just somewhat less than the total incentivized geothermal cost once you factor in all the rigging complexities. Keep in mind, we managed to put 2 free boilers into Leeds Elementary School, and it cost us $300,000 to get them there and install them, right? So imagine rigging out of the high school much, much, much larger boilers, 4 of them, and getting 4 in there. So this avoids that by replacing the chillers with essentially a heat pump boiler room in a box that's configured in a factory and put onto the existing site of the chillers outside of the building. No need to break down walls. So simplifies this because we're planning ahead. The tax incentives are available now, and that's not a guarantee forever. The negotiated incentives that we've discussed with National Grid may not carry over to 2028. They have their own cycle. Failure to register the project with the Massachusetts Alternative Portfolio Standard Market will cause us to miss nearly $100,000 in annual payments. So there are reasons to move as quickly as we can, although this doesn't have the same kind of deadline imposed by the federal government that the solar projects do.
Thank you, Director. I would like to entertain a motion to put it on the floor for approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Moulton and seconded by Councilor Maori. And I'm going to go first to ask questions. Director Weil, is there any concern about us not receiving the tax credits to pay off the short-term bond? I understand that geothermal is not something that has been restricted by the Trump administration in the way that solar and others have.
So one can never be like 100% certain with the Trump administration, but what we do know is that what they did is actually improve the tax credits for commercial geothermal, which this is. So if residential, you're out of luck. It's not going to work for you. But at this scale, we actually have better incentives, more financial models, which in this case we're not taking advantage of, but they actually open it up to more things. So the general trend, kind of the way you might interpret this, is they see it as drilling, and so that it's going to be dependable. I would say, however, that the sooner you move, the sooner you demonstrate that you're starting something, the more likely you're able to grandfather in or safe harbor your project. If the rules change, there's always some sort of a glide path to allow existing projects to continue.
Thank you for providing some of the savings, and I understand and appreciate that the long-term savings are greater than any other option, because in this budget situation, carbon goals and savings have to go hand in hand. So do these energy savings pay for the debt service right away, or does that come after a time? What does it look like in terms of the energy savings?
So the energy cost savings are only about $40,000. So I don't actually have the debt service in my head, although Director Nardi would, so she can give the comparison. But my guess is that it does not directly pay for that. But again, I'd actually love to defer to Director Nardi on that.
Sure, Director Nardi.
Hi. So yes, so the savings will go to the school, and the city will pay for the debt service. And it's about $467,000 estimated at a 3.75% interest rate over 20 years. But the city will pay for that.
I see. And I guess what you're saying though is that like there are two types of bonding, right? There's those that provide an immediate savings, and then there's those that don't. And however, we're going to have to bond for this, whether it's with a standard fossil fuel chiller and or I guess maybe the chillers are not fossil fuel, they're electric, but the boiler would be fossil fuel. We're going to have to pay for that, and that's going to require a bonding that is substantial. So when you add those, what you're saying is when you add those together, you have a net savings over the other option with the geothermal. I see.
Or that they're very close to equivalent after incentives.
Right. And how does this affect our debt schedule and our ability to bond for other capital projects? Is this going to change what other projects we can do?
So the city is actually, our debt liability is dropping by $1.1 million from FY26 to FY27. So this $467,000 fits in nicely at this time because we would have looked for projects to bond to maintain the level debt service. In fact, as we've been talking and people have been talking, we have dropped our debt service slightly as we have used more reserves during the pandemic because of federal funding that we've received. That is now ended. So therefore, we want to start building up our borrowing just a little bit back up into the percentages that we had prior to the pandemic. So right now we're at 3.4% of our levy and operating revenues. We want to increase that slightly more, up to 4% and closer, and move towards 5% as we go forward. So this will not affect any enterprise funding borrowing. I know Director LaScalia has talked about her needs to borrow through the enterprise. All enterprise operational debt and project costs, capital costs come out of the enterprise funds. So the general fund does not impact that.
Great. I thank you. I understand that makes sense. But we are not looking to increase our debt service simply to increase our debt service. We are looking to do that so that we can accomplish goals regarding capital projects. Because if we could not borrow, that would be preferable, and that we could then, some of that debt service money would be freed up to spend on operating. But I am hearing, and looking at capital plans, I understand that for example, this project, we're going to need to bond to replace the boiler if we don't do this project. So, does that in line with your thinking?
So yes, but we also, best practices is to maintain a level debt service so that you are always able to maintain your infrastructure, regardless of whether you have reserves on hand or not. So as we look at our reserves, possibly not being as historic highs as they were during the pandemic, we do want to maintain that. But yes, we do want to have borrowing power for important projects such as this.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to Councilor Maori and then Councilor Clemmer.
Yeah, so I have, I think, 3 questions. So stop me, President, if you want to come back to me. I can do.
No, go ahead.
Okay. First question, I think it was, you basically were answering the impact on the operating budget, how long it would take for the city to receive the tax credits for the savings to go towards the tax credits, if you have anything to add about that. But you kind of addressed it in President Jarrett's question. I guess that's for Director Nardi.
So my understanding is it takes about 2 years to get the tax credits. So we will do short-term bonds, which means we'll pay just the interest, which is estimated very conservatively at $210,000 a year. So that would be 2 years of that payment, but we'll be getting back $5.8 million, which would then go back to, which would pay off the loan.
Okay, thank you. And then just a clarification for Director Wild, that the supplementary heat source, the boiler, is only supplementary until it inevitably dies. We're not planning on continuing to have a supplementary heating or cooling source.
So it's always a good idea to have a backup. And in fact, schools require what's called an N+1 arrangement so that you have a backup. So this would be a backup source so you could use it, for example, if we had a power outage and you wanted to just have enough power to circulate water, you can use a pump and a boiler to get you through what's usually on average less than an hour of a power outage. Under extreme cold weather situations, it is possible that the heat pumps are not able to extract enough heat fast enough out of the ground, and so you might need to bump up the temperature using the boilers. If these boilers are cycling a few times a year, that extends their life for a very, very, very long time. as opposed to cycling like they do now, several times an hour, in the winter. So that's kind of like how we'd extend it. There is a kind of, I would say, an understanding in the renewable energy or building science world that we have a lot of new technology coming along that can provide higher temperatures at high efficiencies, or that we participate in the electric grid with thermal storage. So we're using electric resistance, for example, to pre-store some heat that you can then use later. And you do this at low cost, using arbitrage. So there are all sorts of things that could happen in the future. And this gives us, say, 20 something years to let the technology catch up with us, so that when we do find that we have to replace our backup source, we have options that we may not even know about yet.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. At first, I was, supplementary didn't seem quite as important because, for example, if we have a huge storm system moving in, schools will probably be canceled. But, during the pandemic, we used the schools as an emergency building, and we want to have that capacity as the climate change implications start playing out. So that I was curious about that. And it kind of feeds into my final question, which was a question from a constituent. What if any of the challenges, what if any challenges do you anticipate in the implementation of the geothermal project? And what lessons can we take from other local projects to ensure cost-efficient, effective implementation?
Okay, so I've thought about this a lot because I don't want to encounter those challenges. So the first one is to make sure that your designer understands how you're drilling. So in other words, design properly and design for the technology that your driller is actually capable of, which is one reason why I'm hoping to procure it as a turnkey project. So that's the first thing, is to not have too many chefs in the kitchen, basically, and have a single point of control. The second thing is to have some degree of performance guarantee. So again, that I would want to try and procure this with a performance guarantee. So at least for the first several years, could be all the way up to 15 years, depending how it works. There's responsibility from the company that installed it to make sure that it's working properly and providing us the expected performance, because we probably don't have the in-house capability to assure that, at least not at first, until we've learned the system. So that's one part of it. The biggest failure that has happened with geothermal systems has been unbalanced thermal loads. So if it's too hot and you have too much cooling going on and not enough heating, you end up warming up your geothermal field over the years, year after year after year. It gets too warm, and then you can't do as much cooling, or vice versa if you have too much heating. One thing that I'm confident about, because we've actually really tested the school, is that we actually have a very balanced load. And so that's something that I feel confident about, that we now can design with the existing performance of the school. Even if we improve other things on the school, we'll know that we've got a balanced load. So that's, again, it's technical, but it makes a big difference for the long-term operation of the project. Honestly, having a backup system. So Smith College kind of recently experienced that on some of their systems. They didn't expect to run their backup system, but they did need to run their fossil fuel-based generating station to make up the difference. It takes a while in their case to load enough heat into the ground to get everything going. So a lot of it's about planning. Let's see, Smith College does offer a lot of lessons. One is simplicity. So like, we are talking about a single borehole field on the parking lot, short loops, going to a prefabricated heat pump house, basically like a shipping container that's insulated and has all the components. So again, you don't have kind of workmanship defects. You don't have multiple trades to coordinate. Yeah, I think those are the main lessons, like, and a lot of it really has to do with coordination of the project from the top.
Great. Thank you so much, Director. That's the end of my questions.
Councilor Clemmer.
Hi, thanks. I also have a few questions. So first one, Director Nardi, you said when we get the 5 point something million to pay off a loan, that's actually money that is coming off the top of this project. We're just we're getting over $5 million in rebates or in incentives by doing this now, correct? I don't know if I'm explaining it well.
Yes, so the total cost of the project is 13 million. We're borrowing 5.3, using 2 million out of stabilization. And then we've got to upfront the 5.8, which we will get back in tax credits. So that's why we only need to borrow. Am I answering your question? That's why we only need to cover 2 years until we get those tax credits. So basically, the project is costing us only about 7.3 million.
Rather than 13 something. Because
exactly.
Tax credits, and that's that's part of the reason to do it quickly too. And then Director Weil, so if and people have suggested putting this off, and besides losing all that money for the rebates and tax credits, and if this just if the chillers or the boiler just dies and we have to replace it emergently, what would that look like cost-wise and getting these gigantic units out of the room there that they're in, or whatever storage they're in?
Absolutely. And so I want to address the first part of your question, which is about the rebates and tax credit. So it is not the case, and I'm not claiming that the investment tax credits from the federal government for commercial geothermal are going away. I'm claiming that they are not going away. But generally speaking, being able to get a project at least started or contracted assures that if there is a change, we are more likely to retain those tax credits. But there is no expectation that they're going away until 2032. So I'm not claiming that. The urgency really has to do with, as you said, the chiller, which is something that is already causing problems both in operations and maintenance, and could just provide a better service to the school. And if it fails, considering that summer school is entirely operating there, then we need to replace it under an emergency type of condition. The estimates I've gotten for just the chillers replacement are around $3 million. Again, no incentives, no help with that. That's just the chillers. Once you do that, though, you have basically secured the chiller portion of your heating and cooling system, and that is occupied, and you've spent that money, so that's gone. The challenge with the chillers, again, with removing them, they are outside the building, so 3 million, maybe it escalates to 4 million, but it's in that range, but nothing crazy complex. The boilers, when and if they fail, then you have a challenge, because essentially the building was built around them, and they are not kind of modular components that can be marched out of a door. So to get them out, and there's no room in the boiler room to just leave them in place or anything like that. So to get them out and to get new boilers in, you would probably have to temporarily demolish and reinforce the boiler room wall, get some probably very expensive rigging to get them out. And so that probably adds, just round numbers, $1 million to the estimate that our consultants offered us, which was around the $2.5 to $3 million.
So it sounds like this is going to be as expensive as the geothermal will be.
Most likely, yes. Or it's possible geothermal could be less. So we're taking a worst case scenario with the geothermal. We assumed that we are going to spend $2 million on dewatering. It's possible that once we do the test well, we find out that actually we can handle the water in a lower cost way, and we might have reduced the total cost of the project by about $2 million. The water is like the big, the big expensive part. So, and that's something we just won't know until we do the test well.
And even if the chillers do go, and I mean, we're committed to just awaiting out the boilers also. We're not gonna put in chillers and then switch to geothermal at any point, because you have to do, I mean.
You would have to throw away the money you had just spent
Yeah,
on the
on the
chillers
chillers.
to make that make any sense.
Okay, and then aside from the cost of just replacing the chillers and the boiler, and just to run it for till they die in 25 years or so, it's going to be way more expensive, and it's dirty energy too, correct?
Well, I guess we can say that again, running the chillers and the boilers, we'd have to replace them. So they're not going to run, so this is if you got new ones, but they're not going to get more efficient than what we have. Generally, just because of the technology is it is what it is. So, we're talking about an annual energy cost saving of really only, $40,000, but over 25 years, that adds up to, actually I can try and find it. I'm just not looking at it right now. But the life cycle cost of the 25-year life cycle cost of geothermal is about $13 million. The boiler and chiller life cycle cost would be about 17 or almost $18 million. And there's another option that, because it's even more expensive, we probably are not going to consider, which would be almost $20 million life cycle cost over 25 years.
Yeah, and even $40,000 savings, that's significant. We just approved 43,000 this past year to hire a parent. So, and not that we can use it for staffing or anything, but it's a significant amount, when the schools are in the situation they're in. And I think anything we could do to help them and free up some money for them is a good thing, and we should take advantage of it. So, yeah, thanks for all the work you've done. I know it's, you just don't walk into Home Depot and pick out any of this stuff. I know it's a lot goes on behind the scenes, and I really appreciate it all that you've done.
Thank you.
Councilor Rothenberg and then Councilor Labarge.
Council President, just briefly.
Yes.
So it's my understanding we're not taking public comment. And so anybody who wishes to participate or view this meeting, I believe it's available on NOM. Is that correct?
Yes.
So could we ask the folks please stop raising their little yellow hands?
Yes.
It's disruptive to the meeting and distracting.
Absolutely, I agree. Please, if you're not a member of the body or recognize a city staff, please don't raise your hand. Councilor Rothenberg and then Councilor Labarge.
I just want to make some comments about choices. Councilor Clemmer just said, when the schools are in the situation they are in, right? Every little bit counts. The reason they're in the situation they're in is because that's a choice that we have made as a city council as to funding, and that the mayor has made as to funding. The primary comments we've received from the public about this vote is, why the rush? Why is this not being considered in conjunction with the capital improvement plan and the budget? Because of course it affects both, right? The borrowing becomes part of our operating costs and the debt service, the $500,000 a year. And the borrowing is also finite in terms of what we can fund with the SIP. Director Nardi said we could maintain our debt service so that we're always able to maintain our infrastructure, as though borrowing is somehow an indication of maintenance. And of course it's not. Again, we're making choices there, right? The sidewalks are already broken. We haven't maintained those. So this $500,000 a year, and any loan we take from $5 to $10 million, that could have been a loan for sidewalks, which would make a very significant and immediate meaningful difference. Now, this is not to say that what Director Weil is saying doesn't make sense, that there aren't meaningful differences that can be made here, that there aren't necessary expenditures down the line if we don't do something. But how do we make those choices, right? And the way it's being presented to us today is in a vacuum by itself. It's saying, listen, this is a logical choice, right? We've got tax incentives. We don't know if we're always going to have them. We'll probably have them until at least 2032, but it's not as certain as the sun rising. So we should make sure we can get it, secured now. And so then the question comes, like, how do you make your choice then? Do you say if an incentive is less certain than the sun rising, then it gets to cut the line? Or do we say if something has an incentive, it gets to cut the line? The obligations, the priorities, the balancing, the options, these things need to be considered as a whole. That is why the public is asking us. That is why 2/3 of the Budget and Property Committee of School Committee is asking us to please consider this alongside everything else, because inevitably there are competing good choices. And if we are not looking at all of those together and balancing them, then we are not really functioning properly as a city council. There's a reason that we have a SIP. There's a reason that we have an annual budget process, right? Things don't come to us always just one at a time. And I'm not hearing anything from Director Weil's presentation that indicates that it makes sense for this to be rushed before those impending SIP and budget conversations with the new council that are coming very shortly.
Councilor Labarge. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Director Will, I feel that you're very well versed in energy projects. I would like to know if you've been working with outside experts on these projects.
Absolutely. So in each of these cases, I might use my knowledge to select projects to winnow out the projects that are obviously not as good as others. But this was actually 2 feasibility studies by geothermal in the case of this project, 2 separate feasibility studies by geothermal experts to get not only is it feasible, what are some rough costs, but to get into significant pre-design to look at what are the realistic costs and realistic things that we need to worry about in doing the process. So yeah, this is I'm reporting to you mainly what is provided to us by in this case Bright Core Engineering.
Thank you very, very much.
Is there any other counselor who hasn't spoken that would like to speak? Counselor Perry.
All right, let me lower my non-yellow hand. So one question is, I know that you said we're using a worst case scenario, but what would happen if we do discover that dewatering takes more effort and money? That's one question. And then the second one was just about the chiller, to make sure I'm still on the same page. Is currently we are trying not to run the chiller during the summertime. It's to preserve it. Is that correct as well?
Not so much to preserve it, although occasionally, as I understand it, it's been not operational, so not running because it's not running. But primarily it's because it really has only one speed. It's not like I don't know, like many of the heat pumps that you're familiar with that kind of cruise along and accommodate the different air conditioning demands. In this case, it just turns on, and when it does, it sends a huge demand to the grid, and that ends up costing that it spikes our peak demand for that month, and then the demand charge is set by the chiller. So generally, they try to run it as infrequently as possible, and then once they're running it, they've got to kind of run it for quite a while, right? It's because it's just kind of the nature of this large machine, really. So they're always kind of trying to balance how much discomfort, I suppose, that the school can tolerate and how much discomfort the energy budget for the high school can tolerate. And they're trying to balance those things. And I guess to add, one benefit of a geothermal system is the cooling part uses very, very little energy. And therefore, it actually is beneficial to just keep everybody comfortable and just run cooling whenever there's demand for it.
Counselor Moulton.
Yes, thank you. Did Councilor Perry, did your first question get answered?
Oh,
it's
sorry. What was
Can we go back to that first question and then
Mm.
I'll ask a question?
Thank you. I was going to say that. So the question was just, I know what happens if we discover that dewatering takes money.
Right. Um, so so we are budgeting for the worst case scenario in dewatering. So if we discover that dewatering is the most expensive way is required, that's what this budget reflects. We might get lucky and not have to spend it, but so we're not under budgeting, we're possibly over budgeting. Does that make sense?
Counselor Moulton, did you have any other question?
Yes. Director Weil, if this geothermal project is approved today, what's your ballpark estimate of how long it would take before it's up and operating?
So procurement is going to take a little while, right? So it's just in order to do a turnkey project like this, we have to go through a Chapter 25A and cooperate with DCAM and with DOER. So I would anticipate being able to simply contract for it if you were, say, to approve today, let's say. We would probably not actually get it fully contracted until March or April. It just kind of, I looked back at the timeline of like, that's kind of where we would be, at which point the company would do a test well. Then they would take the information from that test well and do design, and that might take a few months. And that means potentially beginning drilling sometime in let's see, maybe June. And then likely at the 850 feet. And again, a lot of this will be determined by the test well and what sorts of rock we hit and all that sort of stuff. It could take about 6 months.
For it to be operational?
Uh, yeah, yes, I would say for it to be, yeah, probably operation might be a little bit even longer. Once you test things and then you may not have depending on the season that you finally end in, you might be able to test for heating or test for cooling. So yeah, fully operational, if we gave it half a year to get ready, now we're talking about early spring, late winter of 2027.
So we're looking at 15 months, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay, and that would be 15 months of gambling with, is it a single chiller or multiple chillers at the high school?
It's two chillers, one of which apparently it works better than the other. You need two to satisfy the full cooling load.
Okay, so gambling with two chillers, which are not now operating efficiently, you just said,
Yeah,
and could cease operating at any time. Is that right?
it's again, that's what the central services has told me. That's what, as these are discussions with Tony and with Slava, who's our HVAC technician. But again, all of this is unknown, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
why we're gambling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken? Counselor Dubs.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly chime in, and I'm not trying to argue with a fellow counselor who mentioned sidewalks, but just because sidewalks are, an issue that are very important to me. And so I wanted to chime in as someone who is on the capital planning advisory committee, and I've gotten a little preview, as to what's coming up in our SIP. And and I would just want to say that it's more money than has been put towards sidewalks than has been done, I think, maybe ever. So, and I know it's not perfect, but I don't think it's fair to just say that this is either or sidewalks or these projects, because there are efforts being made to improve our sidewalks. I'm seeing it happen, and since I've been counselor, there's been an increase in sidewalk money, with each SIP that I've seen. And so I just, think we need to give some credit to the mayor for, paying attention to sidewalks, and it shouldn't be compared, sidewalks or this. I don't think that's fair. And I just wanted to say that. So thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so we will go back to Counselor Rothenberg.
Yeah, it is fair. It's actually exactly how the SIP works, right? You are choosing from a collection of projects and deciding which of them you can fund. So you don't know yet if it's either or because you haven't finished your SIP. And if you had these all in front of you, you might say to yourself, oh, wow, this investment we're making now in the geothermal is greater than any investment we've ever made in sidewalks. Stan may say that we're gambling with whether or not a chiller works. We are gambling already with whether our sidewalks work. Actually, we're not even gambling because we know that they don't work. We are gambling already with school staffing. Actually, we're not gambling because Desi's already told us that it's not working. There are many things in the city that are broken. When we took a mid-year appropriation for schools out of order, we were asked to account for every single penny and how it would affect every single thing in the city. We were shown these ridiculous slides about how we were going to bankrupt the city and how we were going to demand huge overrides if we made any of these tiny investments. This is being presented to us as though it's a choice that doesn't affect everything else in the city. And that is just nonsensical. It's not to say that it's not a choice you might not decide to make. You very well may decide to do it, and you may also get everything you want from sidewalks, but you cannot know that because you are taking it separately. These things are part of a larger equation, and they should be considered as such. There is no reason that's been presented today to take this separately and not as part of the SIP.
Director Nardi, would you be able to speak to Councilor Rothenberg's concerns?
It's not a concern, it's a comment, and I'm ready to vote.
Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. Director Nardi?
So which concern, like how, explain exactly how you want me to address her concerns, like
The concern that we do not have a picture of the other capital issues, projects, and that the debt service, for example, that we may take on because of this would impact our other projects.
Right. So
Councilor Chair, I've got to get back to work. Just consider this a no vote.
So yes, so we do have an idea of how they'll impact as we work through the SIP, but I'm also looking at the SIP. I'm looking at the debt schedule already. As I've noted, we are dropping $1.1 million, which means, we have space for the projects that have been brought forward. This is a project that we will have to borrow for. As Ben noted, we would have to borrow if we brought it forward for the boilers. So the timing is good for this. We are also, as Councilor Dubs mentioned, we are bringing forward sidewalks and paving and all the other things you're used to seeing. And I am already in the process of looking at that and the dollar amounts. So I do think this is a feasible project, and it is good timing for the borrowing or the debt schedule. If you decide to move forward, I think it's the perfect time to do that. And I think we're still going to be able to afford the other priorities that we're bringing forward on the SIP. Does that mean everything that's being shown to the capital planning advisory committee is going to be funded? Maybe not exactly to the full tune, but I know the priorities are sidewalks, or the mayor knows that, and paving. So those things are moving forward. So I disagree. I think we do know how it'll impact, and I don't think it will impact or change the impact on the operational budget or our ability to have other projects go forward.
Thank you, Director Nardi. Are there any other councilors who have questions, comments before we vote? I will say I understand. I appreciate that there is risk. There is risk always in every decision that we make. But the needs are compelling and the comparable or lower costs and the unanimous support of the school committee, these all bring me towards supporting this measure. Okay, roll call please on approval.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Clemmer,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Rothenberg. I didn't see if she actually left.
Let's see.
So,
I do not see her in the list.
okay, Counselor Dubs,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins.
Counselor Elkins, I believe, switched to her phone, which is Marissa's iPhone. Let me just ask her to unmute.
I wasn't sure if that was her or not because I still saw her other device. I see it now. Okay. Counselor Elkins.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and so Counselor Rothenberg is absent then from the vote.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. That was 25.340 in order to authorize appropriation and borrowing for geothermal system at Northampton High School. That's all on our agenda, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Moulton and seconded by Counselor Labarge. Roll call, please, on adjournment.
Counselor Clemmer,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Dubs,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes. Okay, that passes unanimously. We will meet next on December 18th for our last regular council meeting of this term. Take care, everyone.